Hello, I am the Greek Geek because I'm 50% Greek and 100% a geek. I had so much fun watching this movie. 11 years of movies has been moving up until this moment, and I had so much fun. I don't even know where to begin, and it kind of bums me out because there was a lot I wasn't expecting in this movie, and I really want to talk about it, but this is a spoiler-free movie, so I can't talk about everything in great depth at this time. But here are my thoughts anyway. After the events of Infinity War, the Avengers must regroup and try and think of a way to get back at Thanos and get revenge, and to avenge their fallen comrades, and to acquire the Infinity Stones and try and reverse the finger snap that happened in Infinity War. That's the basic plot of the movie, and I can't say much more than that without spoiling the movie for you. The movie does take some twists and turns, but I can't get into those at the moment. I'm so glad the trailers didn't reveal too much leading up to this movie, and a lot was left to be a big surprise. Again, seeing all these characters come together and interact with each other and work together and fight each other and all that kind of stuff was fantastic to see. But in saying that, I wish some characters did get some more screen time. Some characters kind of get pushed off to the side and don't really have that much to do with the plot. I'm not going to say who because of spoilers and all that kind of thing. I had the same issue with Infinity War, but with such a massive cast of characters, there's no way that you can give every single character an equal amount of screen time. And the main villain as well, Thanos, he got less screen time as well, which is a negative in my opinion. Infinity War focused a heavy amount of attention on him, and that made him probably the best, if not one of the best, Marvel villains of all time. But they focus a lot less on him, and I was a bit disappointed in that. But we did have Infinity War leading up to it, so you got to kind of take what you can get. Acting-wise, I don't want to dwell on this too much because I'm not the biggest expert in what defines great acting or who's doing a good job acting and all that, but I think that Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Jeremy Renner especially did fantastic jobs acting-wise, gave very emotional performances and did their characters justice, I feel. But in saying that, I think that all performances were pretty great and everyone did a good job. So, the Russo brothers had the monumental task of upping their game from Infinity War, which honestly I didn't think could happen, but they've somehow pulled it off. This movie is a monumental achievement, and it's utterly amazing that this movie was even possible. As I just said, Infinity War was a monumental task in its own, and this movie has surpassed it, in my opinion. In scale and scope, at least. So, kudos to them. But one negative thing to do with, not really the direction, but writing, there is so much happening in this movie. There's so many elements from previous movies that you got to remember what happened so you can keep track of what's going on in this movie. So, if you haven't been paying attention to previous Marvel movies in the MCU, you might get a bit lost. I've watched every single movie multiple times, so I didn't really get lost. There were a couple of moments where I had to kind of backtrack in my head and think, oh, what was going on there? What happened? But then I got there in the end. But if you're someone who's just kind of a casual fan, you might find yourself getting a bit lost with the story and the plot elements and the writing. It is not necessarily a bad thing considering the scope of this movie. It's just a lot to take in. Action scenes. Kind of just thinking back on the action now, there's little bits of action peppered throughout the movie here and there to keep you kind of tied over. There wasn't as much action in this movie as I thought there would be. There's quite a bit at the start and little bits throughout the middle to keep you going. But that ending scene, that final climactic battle with Thanos and his minions, in my opinion, that was worth the price of admission alone. There is so much going on. It is absolutely insane and entertaining to watch. I would pay to go see the movie again just to see that climactic final battle. Again, I can't really get into too much of it because I don't want to spoil it for other people. The few issues that I did have with this movie mostly had to do with pacing. The start of the movie is extremely rushed. This is a 3-hour movie and the start of it feels very rushed. A lot happens in a very short amount of time and people are jumping around all over the place and it's a bit hard to keep track of. And while I know most of you are aware, this movie is at 3 hours long, and it didn't feel like a 3-hour long movie. Well, that's not the correct way for me to explain it. My personal experience with this movie is that I was aware that this movie was 3 hours long, but I was really enjoying it. I feel like I say that with a lot of movies that have a long runtime, but something I enjoy. It's These kind of movies, they don't go super duper fast for me, but I am enjoying it as it's happening. Like, it's in it 3 hour long. It's a 3 hour long movie, but it's not like it felt like an hour and a half. It did feel like 3 hours, but I was enjoying it. I don't know if that's the best way to kind of explain it, but that's just me. If you're not a huge MCU movie fan or into superhero movies or anything like this, or haven't watched every single movie and not a big fan, movie will probably drag on for you and you'll probably have no idea what's going on. As a sequel, this movie is kind of a direct sequel to every MCU movie ever made. Everything was leading up until this point for 11 years, and it was fantastic, and it's amazing in my opinion. I think that this movie delivered on everything that it promised. Everything that I expected to get out of this movie, I really kind of did. And not necessarily in the ways that I expected. I got closure for some characters and some events that had happened, not in the way I was expecting, and that is a really good thing. And as I said before, you really have to know what was going on in previous movies to keep track of what's going on in this movie. This movie does not really stand on its own. You have to be aware of what happens in every other movie, pretty much. And that can be a bit of a daunting task if you're just a casual Marvel fan. But I can't help but wonder, where do they go from here? How do they go, like, up the ante from here? This is just, I don't know if this is going to be the top, like the peak of Marvel movies at the moment, and then it's just all downhill, or will they continue just to go up? So, things that I liked about this movie: the characters, the acting, the action, it all looked amazing. This movie cultivated everything I was expecting to get out of it over 11 years. How often do I get to say that? And the story was so engaging, and the twists and turns that I wasn't expecting to see was so engaging. Emotional character moments. There's so much to love in this movie. I think I'm just gushing just a little bit over this movie. And the few things that I had a problem with or I didn't really enjoy, there is very few of them. Some characters I would have liked to have seen more of, but that's understandable. Some characters are kind of just pushed off to the side and don't really do that much in regards to the plot, but again, I can understand why with a movie of this such a grand scale. And I said before, there is some pacing issues, especially at the start of the movie, but that kind of evens itself out as the movie goes on. So, Avengers Endgame. Did it meet your expectations like it met mine? Were you hoping the movie was going to go a bit further and be a bit better than how it was? Did it fall flat for you? Have you even seen it yet? I know some people haven't seen it yet, especially in some other countries that get it a day later. Lucky for us in Australia, we get to see it a bit earlier. Also, that letting you know, I will be putting out a spoiler review. Not really, it's not really a spoiler review. I don't like calling it that. A spoiler discussion. I'll upload that at some point tomorrow while I get the rest of my thoughts together, and I'll be talking about things that have to do with spoilers. So be looking forward to that at some point tomorrow. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sitting and watching me talk about a movie for a few minutes. Hopefully I have entertained you to some degree. Thank you again, and I'll catch you next time.